What is up, New Beginnings Church? Happy Tuesday morning to you, and welcome to our devotional series. We're in that walk through the book of Ephesians still, and we're still in Ephesians chapter 5, but I want to take a minute here to talk about what the Apostle Paul spends a lot of time talking about. As a matter of fact, if you start with Ephesians 5, verse 21, and I'm going to cover all the way till Ephesians 6, verse 9, because I think everything that he addresses there is so specific that I don't want to just land on each one per day. And then at the same time, what I want to do is lump them all in together and see how actually there is this same kind of key component that's pulling the whole thing together. You ready? So Ephesians chapter 5, this is what it says. It starts off with this verse in verse 21 that I think is the umbrella to everything else he's going to talk about for the next, whatever it is, 10, 15, 20 verses. He says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Now notice he hasn't addressed husbands. He hasn't addressed wives. He's about to do that. He hasn't addressed children, or he hasn't addressed like business owners or employees or none of that stuff. He's just saying, hey, here's the umbrella that covers the whole thing. I want you in your attitude and dealings with other people to have a submissive spirit. I want you to consider that I want to be humble and I want to elevate other people above myself. In light of that, how do I apply that to all my unique relationships? Well, sure enough, he starts with wives, and he says the same thing right after he says submit to one another, meaning that's the attitude that we all need to have. I think he fleshes out how each person might end up having that expression. So he starts with wives. He says, wives, you got to submit to your husband. And the way that that's expressed is really found at the end of his whole discourse on husbands and wives, where he says, the wife must respect her husband. So it's the idea of like, hey, in your dealings with your husband, remember this, respect your husband, because that will make your relationship so much better. Men have ego. Men need to be respected. As a matter of fact, men feel loved because they're respected, not necessarily the other way around. For husbands, he says the same thing, though. He basically says, husbands, love your wives sacrificially. The way that Jesus died for the church, that's how I want you to consider your wife. That she's so valuable that you jump on her grenade, you would give your life over, you would do anything to love and to cherish her. And again, I think that's just the expression. Now, when he gets into children, he's just like, all right, now children, you need to obey your mom and dad. Like, don't get it twisted, just obey. And again, I think it's that same thing. Well, we don't want obedience begrudgingly. We're looking for a spirit of, again, submission, saying, hey, look, you know what? I recognize your role in my life. How can I honor that and have a great kind and respectful attitude towards that? He addresses dads. He goes, dads, don't you exasperate your children, but actually train them up in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And so it's that same thing of like, hey, with your dads, or we get to parents with your kids, be gracious. Don't be so hard on them that they all of a sudden take how hard you were on them and think that that's how God is. I want you to treat them graciously. He goes into like masters and slaves, which again, I think is a little bit different in their day than the way we normally think about masters and slaves. But he says, hey, look, if you're a worker, work hard as unto the Lord. Meaning, if that's your boss and you don't like him, the way that you do it is still with an attitude of kindness and respect. And then he even gets into like bosses and owners and masters and things like that. He goes, hey, you lead well. You treat those people the way you want to be treated, because remember, the way that you might be the master over other people, Jesus is the master over you. How would you want Jesus to treat you? That's how you need to treat everybody that's underneath your employment. And so my big picture here is just simply this. Without trying to get into the minutia of each and every role, I want you to see that there is an umbrella that covers the whole thing. Do I have an attitude that is submitted to the Lord? And because my attitude is submitted to the Lord, now I've got humility, I've got kindness, I've got respect, and I've got graciousness for everybody around me. So that's wives towards their husbands, husbands towards their wives, kids up to their parents, even owners and employees and all that stuff like that. And so the attitude is what the Apostle Paul is addressing. And the reflection of that just becomes, well, wives, respect your husbands. Husbands, sacrificially love your wives. Children, just honor and obey your kids. Like, that's the expression of it. And so I want us to be challenged in our heart today. God, do I have a submitted spirit, meaning my heart and my spirit has been submitted to the Lord. And now because of that, I can live a life where out of kindness and respect, I elevate others above myself. What a brilliant thought. So church, take that with you today. Run with that. Let there be a submitted spirit in your heart today. Can I get an amen? Church, I love you so much. God bless you guys. I will see you tomorrow.